everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Parallel Physiques podcast. It is Coach Kenneth and I bringing you an amazing, number one, functional health coach. We have Matt Cusano here. He is also the, what do we say, CEO, COO, founder, master of all things for Rise HRT. So we are going to talk HRT, we're going to talk TRT, we're going to talk all the RTs today. Matt, how are you? Tell us about yourself.
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Laura. I'm excited to be on the podcast with you guys. For those who don't know me, I have been a bodybuilding coach in North Carolina for the last 12 years, and I have been working in the functional medicine realm for the last 6 years. In regards to the HRT realm, that's been about consistently involved in the HRT realm in the last 3 years, working with different practitioners. Um, and I just recently opened my own functional medicine and HRT clinic 100% online this past November. And
Awesome.
that's been going very well.
And that's risehrt.com, correct?
And that is Rise HRT with a YZE.
There you go. Of course, we're going to put that in the show notes so everybody can see that. But
Yep.
we need to talk a little bit of experiences, a little bit of what is HRT? Why would we use it? How does it function? All the good stuff. I know that I use it. My coach over there helped me figure out that I could use needles, which is a little scary for me because I'm not a big fan. But I think it's important to talk about, particularly for, the Gen Pop, those of us in Gen Pop who might be a little more veteran on the planet, who could actually benefit from HRT, how that works for us, why we might benefit from it, and talking about the difference between going to the doctor and getting what they would give us and actually going through a clinic like yours, and what's the difference and why might we do that. So I think those are just some high points maybe we can hit today. Kenneth, what do you think?
I think that's great because I think it's been interesting when I first started coaching on the functional side, finding a Western medicine doctor or like a regular general practitioner to kind of play ball with someone who needs hormone replacement therapy has been really difficult. And so when Matt and I kind of hooked up as colleagues, and initially it was just this like, it's a competitor bodybuilder coach in our area. And I'm thinking, who's this motherfucker? Like, who am I going to have to deal with this now? And so then it turned into, we're like-minded, didn't really expect that. And then we turned into really close friends. And it's funny, like probably my inner circle, this is my inner circle. There might be one other person missing, and that's about it. But I think Matt and I were really on a journey to try to serve our clients better. And so we've tried a couple different approaches with different people. There was one in particular gentleman that we used for a little bit who was kind of on the line of functional and on the line of Western medicine thought processes. And he wasn't not doing a good job. He was doing fine. But there were still some conversations that we were having as coaches that he didn't quite meet us where we were, and we couldn't quite meet him where he was. And so we were talking about an HRT clinic, and Matt had the opportunity to work with another clinic. And then the more we talked about that, he's like, man, I think I could probably do this on our own. And so now Matt's done this. And what I really find is to have a practitioner or, a doctor type figure to work alongside a client with the same thought process as me, it makes it a more cohesive conversation, and it makes the client less apprehensive about maybe some ideas that I have, or maybe getting that second opinion or that second look at their blood work. It really kind of makes things better. And then, Matt, I guess for me, do you want to talk about where you really find challenges? Like I find that like ladies in particular you know, postmenopausal uh, right now in that age bracket, let's just say in their 50s or late 40s, they are hesitant. Some of them are hesitant about HRT. Can you debunk some of why they shouldn't be hesitant?
Sure. So one thing that we all want to keep in mind is the entire purpose of hormone replacement therapy is to replace what is not being produced naturally.
Mhm.
And whether that's due to, various circumstances, but by the time we've decided um, to turn to HRT, we've decided that the body is unwilling to produce those hormones naturally. And that in itself can lead to a lot of health detriment. For women, it can lead to anxiety, depression, several mental health disorders. It can lead to GI issues. It can lead to metabolic syndrome, diabetes, and insulin resistance. It can even lead to Alzheimer's and, brain dysfunction, cognitive decline. It can lead to thyroid dysfunction. It can lead to so many various things. And I think the biggest issue with Western medicine is that they use age as an excuse for someone to feel like shit.
Mhm.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
go to the doctor and you say, I'm tired all the time. I have no sex drive, but I can't sleep. I'm never hungry. I have no motivation. And they say, well, you're old.
Right. Because once you get
And
past a
that's
certain
the end
age,
of the discussion.
yeah, once you get past a certain age, you're just supposed to suck it up because now you're old and that's how life is, right?
Right.
Wrong.
Right. So what HRT clinics or, what my HRT clinic is doing is showing that specific group that they don't have to live the rest of their lives feeling like shit, that the next 40 to 50 years doesn't have to be miserable. Age is truly just a number. And you can reverse a lot of the symptoms of age with with good nutrition, good lifestyle habits, and optimal hormones. And
Yeah.
that's really the key factor there. I think that there are a lot of HRT clinics that do not have that same concept in mind. So that leads to a lot of horror stories that people hear. And let's be honest, even our general physicians don't have the best understanding of women's physiology and hormones.
Right.
I mean, we know just based off of the conventional reference ranges that women are basically set up for failure when it comes to analyzing healthy hormones. And we have doctors calling Dutch tests and GI maps fake science. So,
Yeah.
what are women supposed to do?
Mhm.
Um, I think the biggest question I get or biggest statement I get asked by that specific age group is in regards to health risks,
Mhm.
cardiovascular risks, and cancer risks.
Mhm.
And what I remind everyone is when we look at the negative health risks of high testosterone, we see that they're extremely similar to the negative health risks of low testosterone. Both pose the same cardiovascular risks. Um, the fact of the matter is, we don't want high levels, we don't want low levels, we want optimal levels.
Mhm.
You know, and that's the key. When a hormone is in its optimal natural range, a 20-year-old male or female with perfect optimal hormones, there are no health risks.
Mhm.
So, what
Right.
can the health risks be of having optimal natural health hormones? There's no health risks. The health risks come from imbalances, and that comes from misdiagnosis and poor treatment plans. And in regards to cancer risks, we all know that, especially in women, estrogen is such a driver of various cancers, cervical, breast, ovarian cancer. So, in regards to reducing risk factors in women, eliminating estrogen dominance and keeping that balance is essential for reducing breast cancer or any type of cancer risk.
Mhm.
Right.
So in a lot of situations, by balancing estrogen and progesterone, you could essentially be reducing their risk of cancer, not promoting it.
Mhm.
Right.
Right.
I also think in that particular realm, if you're working with Laura, myself, or Matt, when we're doing a gut protocol, part of that is, you know, the majority of your hormone conversion happens in your gut. So when you don't detoxify correctly through your gut, then you have recirculating hormones, metabolites of those hormones, and that can, over long periods of time cause cancer. It's
Mhm.
linked to breast cancer, things like that. So
Absolutely.
to have a clinic that's not only trying to balance your hormones, but is trying to also functionally look at you and say, okay, you have this gut issue, and this is causing a lot of other things. The conversion of thyroid happens in your gut. There's lots of neurotransmitters that are in your gut that are provided, for mood and various different operations for your brain. So when you look at a clinic like Rise, it's very unique in the fact that you have somebody that's looking at you as a whole person, just like we would as a functional coach. And a lot of what I tell people that I work with is, the difference between Western medicine and functional is it's really simple. Western medicine has all of these ologists. They have a neurologist, they have a gastrologist, they have a cardiologist, they have an endocrinologist. All of those ologists kind of work separately. And some of them are really brilliant people, but, and I'm thankful for all the things that have been positive. But if I took your gut out of your body, are you going to survive?
No,
Or your brain or your heart or any of those things that those
vital
ologists are
organs.
just
Right,
specifically paying attention to, because it's
right.
all interconnected. And
Mhm.
when it's all interconnected and you have someone who's designing a hormone plan with that in mind, I think, with a lot of our clients who are apprehensive for hormone replacement therapy, they've got to understand that they're coming from a place where there's really smart people that have done really good things, but they're missing the boat on the hormone side because that really hasn't been a focus. And I don't know. And I mean, maybe 10 years ago, because that's when I was diagnosed with low testosterone. And even then, it was kind of like, uh, hope it gets better. Here's some Clomid kind of
Yeah.
situation. So, I don't know. How do you feel about that? Would I be spot on in saying those things? If somebody has
Oh, I mean,
reservations, it's like if you make sure that you're looking at all the angles, and then you shouldn't have any reservations, really.
right. I mean, I'll put it to you this way, guys. We did 55 GI maps in the month of December. That's that's
That's
almost
crazy.
that's
That's
almost
crazy.
two a day, you know?
Yeah, that's wild.
So you can imagine how many people, male and female, that I went through their labs and said, yes, you do have suboptimal hormones, but I don't necessarily think that HRT is the solution right now.
Yeah.
Your cortisol is through the roof. We can see that there's poor thyroid conversion. We can see that there's poor estrogen detoxification. We can see that there's mineral deficiencies and vitamin deficiencies present. I think you need a GI map. And when you receive those results, we'll go over them together, figure out a plan to get that optimized, redo your labs, and check and see what type of improvements we've seen um, throughout your hormone markers and your other health markers. And if they're still suboptimal, then we can talk about HRT.
And
Once
Right.
we
I
try,
like that I
you
like
know,
that you bring up the process of that because I think a lot of people think and I know this from my own experiences, you go to the doctor and they order certain labs and they don't always order what you want or what you need. In particular, right, I'm a female and they never order the labs that I need.
sure,
They don't order testosterone. They don't care. They
sure.
don't order what I need. So to take that and know that, for number one, they're not ordering the labs that we need. Number two, most doctors, and I have personal experience with this, don't know how to read them.
Sure.
They don't know how to read them.
Right.
They can't see the patterns. They don't know the patterns. When you say, you don't have optimal thyroid, you have some issues with, they don't know that. They can't read that. They can't see that for us to even take it to the next step to say you need a GI map, which, as we already alluded to, they're never going to have you do a GI map.
Right.
But that's where we as functional health coaches come in, particularly when we are associated or when we have this connection with a clinic like yours, is we can have our clients go, we can see it, we can read the labs, you can read the labs, we can get, bounce ideas off of each other. We can have our clients come to you to get the labs done and get the GI map done, and we can have those conversations because then we can really dig in. Because guess what? Like the whole conversation you guys just had, it's not about the number on the lab that says your testosterone is X and your estrogen is Y and your progesterone is Z.
Right.
We need to know why those numbers are where they are.
Right.
And like you said, and that's the key, right? Is there's so many factors that go into that. It doesn't just mean, oh, my body's not producing estrogen anymore. Well, maybe it is, but we're just not seeing it. Right. Or maybe it's just not producing enough, or maybe it says I have too much, so I don't need any, because that's what happened to me. All of a sudden, my estrogen was super high. And I was working with someone previously who just kept bumping my progesterone up. Well, guess what I had? I had a major gut issue. And by the time we figured out it was a gut issue, which that person did not figure it out, it was Kenneth, I was a wreck.
Yeah.
Because I had so many hormones in me. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So it's not just about finding, any HRT clinic, wherever. It's finding one, like Kenneth said, that works with you and can work with your coach. And if you don't have a coach, they can coach you and help you to feel the best you can, because we're going to get to that root cause.
Yeah.
Right.
No, absolutely. I mean, our consults are designed to be 30 minutes long, but I can't remember a single consult that I've had that's less than 45 minutes, because I'm just going in detail over their labs. To your point earlier, Laura, what we all have to remember, and this is especially important for that population of your listeners, your general physician's job is not to put you in optimal health. Your general physician's job is to keep you alive. At the end of the day, that is what a doctor's job is to keep you alive. So when a doctor views labs, he's saying, is this person dying? Is this person in a state of disease that I need to address immediately? And if the answer is no, they move on. Their job is not to get you in optimal health. So if you go to the doctor expecting them to run, comprehensive labs, checking your adrenals, checking your thyroid, checking your sex hormones, they're going to look and see, she's surviving,
Yeah.
and of course they don't understand adrenal dysfunction and how that can pertain to blood pressure, cardiovascular issues, kidney dysfunction. They don't know those attributes. So how often does cortisol even get checked unless we're demanding it? Never.
Yeah, it's never.
Never. So to your point, and like you said, women's physiology has just not been studied nearly as much as men's. So in the general consensus of what doctors look at when they're looking at hormones, they don't pay attention to women's testosterone too much. If anything, they're paying attention to estrogen. And that's LH, FSH, and estrogen is probably, I'd say, the main things that a doctor knows to look at in a woman's woman's body. Definitely not progesterone.
Boy, I tell you what, I have never had a doctor test my FSH and LH ever.
Really?
Ever. Not ever.
I mean, once you're on HRT, it really doesn't, the point is moot anyways.
Well, true. But I mean, prior to that, I've been on HRT, I think 2 years. That's
it's
it.
been 2.
Yeah, just 2. Never have they ever. No. And most women don't even know what that is.
Sure.
Because women, and I think that's the hardest part for a woman of this age who is now broaching these subjects, right? Because usually a woman comes to this and comes to someone, a coach, because why? They can't lose weight.
Yeah.
I have menopause belly, which drives me crazy. Stop saying that. Right? Stop eating carbs because you're screwing up your insulin. That is not true. My insulin is awesome. But that's why they come to us. And then the education behind what's actually going on during menopause,
Yeah.
women don't, so many women don't have any idea how their body works because we've never been told that. They go, here, take this pill, you won't get pregnant. See you later, bye. Come and see me in a year so
Exactly.
we can make sure you don't have cervical cancer and we can
Right.
spread the who's and do the who's, and then you're out. And we can give you another prescription. There's no education. And that's what I love about functional health. That's what I love about your HRT clinic is that you get the education that you should have had when you were 13 and 14 years old.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
It's true.
100%.
And I'm not, and I tell this to all my ladies because I've had some people say, are you anti birth control? I am not anti birth control. I'm anti not being educated before you put something in your mouth.
Absolutely. That's the biggest thing, in regards to avoiding pregnancy. It does a great job. And in circumstances it's needed, especially with so much back and forth discussion in the government about abortions
Right.
and whatnot. So we have to allow women to have that power.
Yes.
But with that being said, why has there never been a discussion about, more about what men can do? Whether
I would
that's,
agree.
getting snipped they've experimented with male birth control. And do you know why none of them work? Because they shut down male testosterone, and that can't possibly be allowed.
But you can
Right.
shut down my estrogen and my progesterone all day long.
Correct, because you
Yeah.
can
All day
still
long.
technically function. You might
Right.
be crazy, but you can function.
I'm
But I
not
mean,
crazy anymore, but yeah.
not enough men, can really put this in perspective, but men who take testosterone can put this into perspective. Imagine if at 13 and 14 years old, we were prescribing men 20 milligrams of testosterone a week. Not enough to replace them, just enough to shut them down so that they couldn't impregnate other women. That
Right.
wouldn't fly. That wouldn't fly one bit, you
Right.
know?
Right.
Um, However, if we had a different discussion about vasectomies and told a bunch of 16-year-old boys that they didn't have to worry about pulling out, I bet a lot of them would be signing up.
They're
You're
like,
right.
where is
You're
that
right.
again? Yeah.
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 Yeah,
I, I,
exactly.
I think that there's a really big stigma around vasectomy being the same as castration. I think that's how most men think about it because I'm sure you guys have had this conversation with clients because women will ask me, well, what am I supposed to do? And I say, well, if you're in a serious relationship, then a discussion might be for him to get a vasectomy.
Mhm.
And I can hear him in the background, yeah, fucking right, or
It's
something like that. And it's just like,
a super easy procedure.
so you'd
You're in
rather
and
your
out.
partner just be fucked up the rest of their lives,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I got a vasectomy in May of last year, and I'll tell you what my perspective was. I was terrified that it was going to be really, really painful,
yeah,
and then I was going to be sitting in my bed with a bag of frozen peas on
sure,
my balls for a week,
sure.
and I was gonna have to like go get my scrotum lanced if it swole up to like
Infected.
the size of a plum or something, or big
Sure,
old grapefruit or something. So
sure.
at the end of the day, what ended up happening was I used Dr. Monteith here in Raleigh, and I met with a guy for 10 minutes before the procedure, and he's like, "All right, you ready to do this?" I was like, "Yeah." So go in. It's like literally the pain of like a rubber band snapping on your skin slightly. And then I felt some kind of tugging around a little bit. And then literally in 10 minutes, it was over. And the only thing that I remember from the whole procedure is he had like a TV above my head. And I was watching this Food Network show that had this unbelievable cheeseburger that they were preparing. And I was paying more attention to the cheeseburger than I was to the guy tugging on my sack.
Yeah,
And like ultimately, when I walked out, I asked him, I was like, do I have to put ice on it. Is there anything that I need to do? He said, no, you need to relax, hang out, watch TV today. Tomorrow, you'll be, you can move around and be a little bit more active. In 48 hours, if you want to have sex, you can. And by the end of the week, you can lift weights. And I was like, well, shit, this is not too bad at all. However, the one thing that they don't tell you is you're not immediately sterile. So it takes about, I don't know, I think it's 3 months to basically clear the system,
Mhm.
so you don't impregnate your significant other. So there has to be an alternate form of birth control during that period of time. But now it's a situation where, man, I don't regret it. And even if I did regret it, you can reverse it. So
Exactly.
it's just it's an extremely safe procedure that was very minimally invasive. It was like $900 total. And I mean, I just think about like over the course of your life, Laura, how much did you spend on birth control?
A
I
lot.
don't know. It was probably $900, right?
Oh,
So ultimately,
I was on
yeah,
birth
more
control
than
for
that.
31 years. Oh my God. It was a lot
Right,
of
right,
money.
right. So you just never know, and I think that's something to talk about too. Uh, and also, I want to get into the male thing. I want to finish this up, but I want to get into the male side of hormone replacement therapy because
Sure.
everybody has this
Ooh, I have a good
perception that
segue
it's like,
though.
well, I just want to get jacked.
I have
Okay,
a great segue into that because I find it interesting
okay,
that as we age, right, and you kind of alluded to this, Matt, right, is like deal with it. You're not going to feel good, whatever. But that's not necessarily true if you're a man, because
Sure.
when you watch television and you see all the commercials for, oh, if you have low T, you can do this, you can do that. Here's a pill, here's a this, here's, so at least they're advertising for it. When you're a female and you get close to menopause, you're going through menopause. Number one, doctors just go, suck it up. We don't care if you can't sleep and you have hot flashes and I mean, nothing to help out. But then once you get through it, there's no conversation about the health implications, like you were talking about, Matt, of not having those on board anymore. And some women nowadays are getting through menopause in their early 40s, mid
Yeah.
40s, and they have 40 years to go with no hormones on board. And they're not being counseled about what that actually means for their health. Right. So,
yeah,
so the door is kind of, I feel like when it comes to men, we're starting to have that conversation more mainstream around, hey, you're not feeling great, you might have low
yeah.
T, right?
We do. We do.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. I want to touch on this first.
Sure.
I think in my particular experience, uh, if you go to a general practitioner and you're trying to get testosterone,
Mm.
they would rather prescribe you an opium based product
Mhm.
than testosterone.
Wow.
Um, the cost of testosterone right now, if you go and purchase it through insurance, insurance companies are almost not paying the full cost anymore. I have a couple clients who are now paying $65 for a vial of testosterone, and we're talking about a 1 milliliter vial. We're not talking
Right.
about a 10 milliliter vial. And so the cost is going up through insurance. On top of that, when you do see the advertisements on TV, it's for these supplements.
Oh
It's
yeah,
these
they're
supplements
junk.
that people are selling, and it's all crap, right?
Yeah, it is,
Right.
it's junk.
So at the end of the day, there's still a bunch of stuff going on that people are having a really hard time navigating through these waters because they don't really have a trusted source. And
Mhm.
so that's another reason why I wanted to have you on here, because I'll tell you this, even my perspective prior to, um, us working together and getting on hormone replacement therapy myself 10 years ago, man, I thought TRT clinics, they were just creepy and they were gonna fuck me up either way. And they were going to try to sell me a bunch of peptides, or they're going to try to sell me something that was fake or whatever. And it was going to cost me an arm and a leg. And so part of this conversation is, if you're a male with low testosterone and you're having a difficult time getting it from your general practitioner, this is a place that you can trust. However, you're also going to understand where you stand hormonally, because just like females, they're way more complicated than us dudes. But the problem with us guys is we're stupid, right? So like you walk into you're like, hey, so I don't feel so good, and they're like, oh, your hormones, your testosterone's 250, you're fine you're within the reference range. Well, at 250 nanograms per deciliter, I wanted to put a gun in my mouth,
Yeah.
right? So, and that's the issue, that there's misinformation and lack of education on both sides, and sometimes both get a bad rap because women aren't respected the way they should be, and dudes are treated as dummies. And a lot of us kind of are, because they're like, I just want to feel good. Can we just feel good? And, I just want to have an erection. It's like, okay, well, how do we navigate that?
Right.
So,
Well, and yeah, I mean, as long as guys get comprehensive enough labs, I always dive into adrenal function and thyroid
mhm.
function with them. You brought up a great point there. Sex drive. Sex drive is something that we hear both men and women talk about a lot in the functional and HRT realm. And even people taking HRT still struggle with sex drive. And what I explain to all of them is that it's for one reason or another, a stress response. Their body is in a fight or flight state, and it's so focused on survival that it's not thinking about sex or fertility.
Mhm.
And that's essentially what we all have to understand. We understand this, but it's hard for others to understand that the human body was not designed for 2023. And that's something that I explain to literally each person I get on a call with when they ask, why are these things happening? I say, because our body was designed thousands of years ago for caveman times. It wasn't designed for this. It can't differentiate those stressors that we incur each day. And, as stress goes up, whether it's our own doing or it's just life, smacking us in the face, our body's adapting to that. So a lot of the dysfunction that we see in our body is actually just adaptations to stress. And there's just so many various different stressors these days. And, I know we initiated this conversation talking about people in the over 40s category, but even recently in the past 5 to 10 years, we've seen much younger individuals dealing with hormone decline. The story used to be guys over 35. Now it's like guys over 28.
You're
Um,
exactly right.
and so the decline is just happening a lot younger or earlier in life for both men and women. For women, it's obviously majority birth control related, but not just birth control. And I explain that to people too. Yes, that can cause a lot of dysfunction, but it's typically not the sole, variable. It's the combination of that impacting the HPA axis plus chronic dieting, because we know every teenage woman is dieting and stuff. Plus, if you throw in their partying or trauma or that type of stress, it's the accumulation of factors adding up by the time that they reach their 20s. That's when the shitstorm really hits. um and it's environmental toxins, it's our water supply, it's our food quality, it's the plastics, it's everything, it's social media. When we look at the various generations, because of social media and everything, I feel bad for the generations under me because they are held to such a different physical standard and, standard of success and everything, that it would just be so hard to compete as a modern day high schooler. I feel like
Mhm.
you like have to look like a Greek
Mhm.
god and bench 405 at 16 years old to even be impressive these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just it's just outrageous how much it's changed.
You're exactly right.
Yeah. And I think what's great about what you're saying is that we as functional health coaches, we bring that to light, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get that from a doctor. You're not going to get that from a nurse practitioner. we're going to bring that to light for you, because hormone imbalances, particularly at the younger ages, have everything to do with the choices that you're making and the perceptions that you have of your life, right?
Sure.
It's lifestyle, it's mindset, it's activity, it's all of those things. And if we can get you young enough and get you working with a coach so that you can overcome these things and find pathways through them, right? We can we can literally change your life so that when you're 40, 50. And I know people, I mean, I remember when I was in my late teens and 20s, I'm like, man, people who are 50, they're really old. I'm never gonna, um, but and you don't think about that, right? Because mortality isn't an issue then. But if we can start creating those habits at those young ages,
Sure.
we can make it so much better for them. And here's the thing, like we've talked about, even in your 40s and 50s, it's not too late to change those habits. We might need to supplement with some things, right, to be optimized, but we can still make those changes and still feel good. We don't need to be, riding that horse into our grave feeling like we're doing that when we're 55 or 60, and live
No,
20.
I mean, I've worked with several people in their 40s who feel better than they did in their 30s.
Right.
And I know Kenneth has too.
Well,
So
I mean, I'm actually that person.
you're that guy.
So, I'll tell you, like, when I was in my 30s, I would say the majority of the time I kind of felt run down. I didn't even really know that I felt bad. But the gym would tell me. So I'd go into the gym and my knees would hurt and my shoulders would hurt. I'd get tendonitis really easily. Does that sound like your life right now, Matt? Um, so I'm just picking on
Since
you.
24.
So I would, I would feel really rough in the gym, and I just thought that was normal. I was like, well, I'm just beating myself up. And I
Yeah.
was probably training too much and I was probably not doing some things.
Yeah.
But one of the things that absolutely changed my life was getting on hormone replacement therapy. I mean, I'll tell you a little bit about what happened. So at the age of 28, I was not 100%. I couldn't lose weight. I couldn't I didn't have a normal libido. I didn't have a really good outlook on life. I was pretty depressed all the time, and I knew something was off. But I didn't do anything until I was 30 when my wife left me. I was like, well, shit, I probably should go to the doctor because we had some issues, and one of those things was my libido. And you have this manhood thing where you're like, I'm not going to fucking give up my manhood. If I go into the doctor and I tell him I got something wrong with me, then I'm just giving my man card out immediately. So I finally swallowed my pride and I walk into this doctor's office. And I remember the guy wasn't too far from my age. So I was 30, he was probably 38, and he looked like he would lift weights. And so he asked me, he said, why are you here? I said, I'd like to get my testosterone checked. He said, okay, no problem. He said, let's go ahead and run labs and then you can come back and we can talk. So I came back like the following week. He sits me down and I'll never forget it. He walked in the door. I was sitting by the door, the entrance door, and he was walking in the other side of the room. And he looks at me and he stops. He said, you want the good news or you want the bad news? I said, well, I want the bad news first. I mean, I can't. I don't, lead me on. And he's like, well, you're basically a woman. You have the testosterone level of a girl.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, oh, okay. And he said, but the good news is I can fix you. He's like, we can get it squared away. And so what he did was he prescribed me Clomid. And Clomid was an oral, and I was more apt to take Clomid because, well, I was 30, and that's sort of a fertility pill that if the basic function of it is it raises estrogen in the body. And when it raises estrogen in the body, it causes the pituitary gland to tell the balls to kick in your natural production. So it took about 6 months for me to feel better. But man, what did I feel like I was fucking 18 years old again? The wind could blow, and I was like, "Hey, mailbox, you want to have sex?" Like it was like, I was like, "What's up?" And then it just stopped.
Yeah.
It just stopped working, And ultimately what happened was is the function of my pituitary gland and my balls just started to stop working.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing TRT. Well, I still I didn't feel as good as I did while I was on Clovid for some reason. But I didn't realize this. I was going through a divorce. I had a lot of stress. I was eating like crap. And I'll be honest with you, for about a month there, I think I drank a bottle of wine a night. And I was just devastated, right? So ultimately, what I did was I caused gut dysbiosis in myself, and I didn't know it. I thought, oh, diarrhea, it's normal, constipation is normal, gas is normal, and the next thing I know, I'm probably, I don't know, I was 38 years old, and I finally go through a gut protocol with Austin, my coach, and dude, it was like I turned back the hands of time. My knees don't hurt anymore. My shoulders don't hurt anymore. I don't have headaches anymore. My inflammation is significantly lower. I have abs. I'm 40 years old and I don't look 40. I mean, I might in the face some days, depends on how rough the day is. But right now, I mean, I feel like I look pretty good. So at the end of the day, I think if you don't know what's going on, reach out to somebody that could potentially tell you, because hell, I didn't fucking know. And when you go on the journey, you start peeling back the onion and you're like, wow, I'm way more messed up than I ever thought I was.
Sure.
And it's, I think the majority of people are in this boat.
Well, I agree because
There's no one I work with that isn't.
well, it's because society has normalized disease and dysfunction. And so when we pay attention to things because we've now, we've taken the red pill, if you will. But like 15 years ago, none of us knew these things. So we didn't recognize how shitty we felt. We just thought being tired was normal. Having gas and heartburn and digestive issues is just normal. You take Gas X and you take omeprazole and Tums. They just normalize everything. And it's not until you
Mm-hmm.
get better that you realize how fucked up you were. And that was the same situation with me when I first started fixing my GI issues. Um, I felt significantly better. And then the next time I felt like a huge change again was actually when I linked up with Mayor Pachi.
Yeah.
She made me recognize how fucked up I was because of how much improvement I saw. And I'm
You
just
will.
like,
I tell people that all the time. Like, you do not know how bad you feel until you start to feel good. And then you go, wow. Right?
it was literally a wow.
Yeah.
It was a wow
And
every
Mayor's going
day.
to be on the podcast. She's going to
Next,
be on the podcast next week.
next week.
Mayor's the best. Mayor's
Yeah,
Mayor's one of the best female coaches I've ever encountered.
I
Wow.
agree.
She is truly just amazing. And she's an amazing person.
Yeah.
That's
I
cool.
don't have nice enough things to say about Mayor.
Yeah. Well, do we have anything else we want to talk about from a hormone replacement therapy standpoint?
Um, I don't know. Do you guys have any other questions?
I think.
One thing I'll say that
I actually, go
I get
ahead.
asked in every single consult this.
Mhm.
Everyone asks me, is HRT a commitment for life? And the answer goes back to our original discussion. The point of HRT is to replace what's no longer being produced naturally.
Hmm.
So if we decide to go down this road, we've officially decided that your body is unwilling to produce this naturally anymore. For example, let's say a guy comes to us with a 300 testosterone and we give him HRT to bring him up to 1,000. If in 5 years he decides to stop taking that HRT, he's going to go back to 300
Hmm.
or less because now it's
Probably less.
5 years later, you
Yeah.
know. So no, nobody's holding a gun to your head saying you have to do HRT for the rest of your life. but all the things that HRT helped you feel better, those are going to go away when you stop taking the HRT.
Mhm.
So you're going to
Mhm.
feel like crap again. The HRT is what's allowing you to feel good despite the unfixable dysfunction in your body, whether
Right.
that's due to
Mhm.
age or just 30 years of birth control, or, whatever it may be. Um, so it's always a tough conversation because yes, it's a long-term commitment, but it's not. It's your choice. You're making a commitment to feel good. You're
Well,
not
but
making a commitment to take drugs.
the interesting thing though, when you think about that too, is the downstream effects if you don't. And you alluded to this
Sure,
earlier in the conversation, right? If our
sure,
hormones aren't in a good spot, we're going to
sure.
see metabolic dysfunction, we're going to see cardiovascular dysfunction, we're going to see diabetes, I mean, adrenal dysfunction, we're going to see all those things. And that, so the question is,
Alzheimer's, dementia, you name it.
right. The question is, do you want to optimize your health for the long term and
Right,
do this and make a commitment to this? Or
right.
are you willing to say, I'm good, and then see all those other effects occur, which are those effects of aging and losing those hormones? Like you said,
Sure.
it's your decision, but you need to know, it's the education piece, right? You need to know the good and the bad and the ugly of it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sure. And I think where most people just don't know is they don't know how much their hormones are making them, their lack of hormones are making them feel bad. I tell women,
Right.
almost every woman that we encounter at the clinic, with very low progesterone is on anxiety medication.
You're
And
exactly
I'm
right.
and I
Yep.
even tell them stories of how I've encountered so many women throughout my career that are prescribed birth control and anxiety medication at the same time. And it's also almost like a 2-for-1 combo pack that doctors prescribe, and
And wouldn't it
as
be
soon as
nice if they knew why they had to do that?
right, right. And as soon as we fix their gut, fix their stress, balance their estrogen and progesterone, that anxiety has significantly declined, and there's a good chance that they might not need that medication. Now, of course, there's plenty of reasons for mental health issues and anxiety and depression, but I don't think enough people understand how much hormones do play a role in
Mhm.
that.
Yes.
And so there are opportunities that if you have balanced hormones, you may not require other medications for the rest of your life. And if I had to choose between HRT and blood pressure and anxiety medications, I'd take the HRT.
I would agree. I also had a client at one point come to me, and I always ask for a list of medications.
Mhm.
And this particular girl, the timeline was really interesting. She said, I'm on birth control. I started that 7 years ago. And then at the beginning of this year, we were towards the end of the year, I started taking Adderall.
Mm.
And then by the middle of that year, I started taking Prozac.
Mm.
And so she's like band-aiding all these things, right? So as soon as she told me the timeline, I was like, okay. So what happened is is you started taking birth control, which caused you to have SIBO, which messed up your neurotransmitters. So now you can't function, like your brain doesn't function to be able to focus as well. That's why you're taking the Adderall. And the Adderall and the birth control have basically downregulated some of the other hormones in your body. So now you have anxiety and depression and you don't know how to cope with anything. So what you went and did is you did 3 bodybuilding competitions back to back to back, and now you're a complete wreck and you don't know how you got here, but I do. And she literally sat there for like 2 minutes and was like, holy shit, that makes a lot of sense. And I was like, so what you got to do is you got to come off the birth control.
Yep.
I said, I recommend a copper IUD if you want to do birth control.
Yeah.
That's probably, I mean, it's not the most optimal thing to do, but we can at least work with that.
Least invasive.
It's Yeah, it's got its own issues. And then let's go ahead and try to come off all the other medication. And if we had her on the podcast right now, she's still a client. She is so successful and she's feeling so good. And it's taken us a while, and we're getting out of gut protocol sooner rather than later. And ultimately, she'll compete and she'll probably blow away that physique that she had on stage a year ago, 2 years
Yeah.
ago. And that kind of brings me to my last question with you. From a bodybuilding standpoint, who are you really excited to put on stage this year?
Man, I'm excited for a couple people. I'm definitely excited for Tom. You know, he always takes at least a 2 year off season.
Mm-hmm.
Every off season Tom's done is 2 years. So, and he always makes huge improvements. So I'm very excited to see how that comes together this year, especially because I'm supporting him a bit through the clinic. We're doing some NAD plus, and we're doing some glutathione troches. Um, we just talked about this the other day. I actually just got him some testosterone troches to do pre-workout, to give him a
Mm-hmm.
little extra boost in the gym. The theory there is, it's not toxic like oral steroids, but it does kick in quite fast. So he's going to get that extra boost without any added toxicity on the body. Um, so I'm excited to see how that little experiment goes with him. Um, I'm really excited about Maria, my pro bikini girl. She just got blood work done, so we're just waiting on those lab results to come back. But she seems to be extremely healthy for someone who competes so often. All of her past labs have been quite impressive. So she's one of those like one percenters that
Genetically gifted people. Yeah,
yeah,
right.
they have a great stress threshold, and she just thrives no matter what she gets, thrown into. We'll see if that's still the case with this latest lab, but that's what I've seen in the past, and her body doesn't give us any negative feedback at all. I mean, she's 104 pounds, eating 400 carbs,
Wow.
doing no
Oh,
cardio. So
Killing it.
dang.
I mean,
Killing it.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's very impressive. So she'll be fun. Fixing Zach's gut and seeing what he can do in an off season is going to be extremely exciting because I'm sure that's limited his ability to grow. So
Yes.
there's a lot of
I'm I think I'm more I think I'm more excited about that than anything else to watch Zach actually perform optimally. That's a scary thought for the competition out there.
yeah.
So,
I wonder how long he's been hindered, to be honest. So this is going to
oh,
be
forever.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
I mean it's possible.
Yeah,
He's had estrogen issues since we met, so it's most likely it's been since 2019 at least. And it's
yeah,
just kind of progressively gotten worse over the years. Um, but yeah, I mean there's definitely some athletes that I'm super excited about. Um, Hopefully I can just squeeze it all in this year.
right.
Um,
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm gonna be traveling like every other weekend, I think, between shows and promotions. One last thing that I did want to touch on, that I forgot to mention earlier, especially for the women over 40. We always want to be sure that they're getting their DHEA tested along with their
Mhm.
hormones. That's something that doesn't always get tested when it's not, the functional coaches sending them to us.
Uh-huh.
And what a lot of women don't understand is they'll get on testosterone therapy, but no one's addressed the DHEA, and the DHEA is still low. And so they're on testosterone, but they still don't feel great. Their sex drive isn't great. Their motivation isn't great. And that DHEA is a huge component for women. It doesn't play a major role in men, which is why I don't think there's too big of a focus around it. But in women, it plays a huge role because 90% of a woman's testosterone production is coming from that DHEA and that the adrenals. Everyone's so focused on male physiology and thinking, well, men produce testosterone in their testes, so women produce testosterone in the ovaries. But the ovaries are only producing 10% of that testosterone. 90% is coming from the adrenals,
Mhm.
which means as soon as a woman's stress goes up and the adrenals start prioritizing cortisol,
Yep.
they're not prioritizing everything else.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
oftentimes when we look at into why a woman's testosterone is low, we can see that the breadcrumbs from the DHEA.
Hmm. That's
So
great.
I
Yeah.
always like to, to make sure a woman feels optimal, we want to make sure that both her DHEA and testosterone are in an optimal place. And having, implementing the DHEA can actually help women be more resilient to stress from what we've seen in research. So lots of benefits to optimizing those both. And we don't often see that from other HRT clinics.
True.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. So, Matt, you know the next part. How do people find you? How do people find Rise HRT?
Yeah, so the best way to find Rise HRT is to just go to our website, www.risehrt.com. You can obviously also follow us on Instagram. We're always sharing, educational information as well as promotions, sales, and stuff like that. You can follow me as well on Instagram. My IG name is Matt the Body Tech. And I'm pretty much an open book. Feel free to reach out to me. Any questions, comments, concerns that you may have, I'm always open to chat.
Perfect.
Funny memes.
Lots of memes.
Right.
We'll get weird.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, guys, thanks for the conversation. All things HRT, TRT. I'm sure we could have talked for hours about everything associated with this. So hopefully, Matt, we'll have you back on. Get
Definitely.
some questions from our audience, some specific questions that we can address with you. I think that would be fabulous.
Sure.
It's been a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Have a great week, guys.
Absolutely.